Go for it. If you can figure out Instagram stories, feel free. First, I want to thank you all for coming out. This is, Laura knows this, I didn't want to do this because my biggest fear, and I'm going to cry.
No, you have to tell everybody your name in case it is.
No, they don't. It's on the books if you haven't figured out. I am Sara Marks. I'm going to cry because I cried while practicing, and I cry in everything, including Will and Veronica have left, but they've actually witnessed me cry at a horror movie. To be fair, John Krasinski's life was in danger.
I cried.
Exactly, like you cannot not cry at that movie, and you are also horrified at the same time. So thank you everybody for coming out. A specific thank yous to Susan Gates and the Chelmsford Center for the Arts, who have been so gracious and so supportive. Not just of me, but of writers all over this town. All over this
Yay for the CCA!
Susan and I met through my working with National Novel Writing Month, and she has been with me on every step of the way. She is the reason these books are published, because she called me one afternoon and said, I know this lady, Laura, and she is starting this group. And if I hadn't met the SIPA writers, Laura Marshall specifically, I would not have had the guts to even consider submitting my writings to somebody else and to letting the world read them. I would still be writing fan fiction about Cedric Diggory. We'll get to that. A second thank you to Hannah Dempsey in the back, who brought with her the deep fried olives and the bacon wrapped dates. If you don't know what they are, that's what they are. They are heaven. They are not good for your body. They are incredibly important for your soul. So thank you to her and to her stepfather, Marco, who owns Marco's on Main, amongst another restaurant and a taco truck and just catering. He's in downtown Air. And I highly suggest you head out there. His piccata is delicious. And he's Italian, so it's right. And then, even though nobody from them is here, Little Delights did the macarons, which are ons, not uns. We discussed this morning. And the cupcakes, which I don't think we've opened yet, but we will enjoy once I shut up. So I will try to minimize this. It was like a 15-minute run time when I was practicing. We're going to get the questions later. So when I started 3 years ago thinking about publishing, I had to come to terms with something. And while I was promoting Modern Persuasion last year, I really had that big moment where I realized I'm a romance writer. Here's the thing. A lot of people know I'm kind of cynical, but the reality is I'm just a romantic with bad luck. And most of you know I don't bother dating anymore. It's not worth it for me, because I've made choices in my life that mean I don't have to wait. I'm the person who takes the chances. I'm the one who doesn't decide to wait for someone to take me to Paris. I just go to Paris. I have decided 2020 I need to research in Paris. This year I'm going to research in Disney World at Epcot Center in their Paris drinking wine. And if someone wants to come with me, by all means, but I'm not going to wait. So I came to terms with this because the truth is I love a romantic story. I can cry at a horror movie, but I love to find the romance no matter what genre I'm in. For example, if Carisi and Amanda get together on SVU, I'm going to stop watching that show because that is a terrible match. They are not right for each other. She is the worst person for him. He deserves someone better. You don't need to know. You don't even need to know because
It's bad.
You know.
It's bad.
But I'll find the romance and love the romance in any genre I'm watching or reading. But if it's not there, I'll make it up in my head. And if I don't like it, and we all know how I feel about Cedric Diggory, I will rewrite it in fan fiction to my satisfaction. And that's where this came from. But there's a reason I struggle with romance novels very specifically. I can do a romance book differently than I do a romance movie or a romance show. Never Been Kissed, Clueless, French Kiss, These romantic comedies have a permanent spot on my DVR, and eventually in my iTunes collection, because I need to get a new DVR. It's dying out. I will go to them when I am just bored. Forgetting Sarah Marshall is free on Netflix right now. It's free on Netflix right now. And I love Jason Segel so much that if you haven't figured out that he is Frederick, you're not paying attention to Jason Segel. That's it. He's Frederick. Neil Patrick Harris meets Jason Segel is Frederick. And if you can't read it, you'll figure it out now, because I've just told you. So here I am. I can do a romance movie, I can do a romance show, and I hate romance novels. Hate them. And there's one big cardinal sin of the romance book that I just can't get over. And it's the fact that these women are waiting for their lives to begin. They're trying to lose weight. They're obsessed with weight loss. They're waiting to find their husband. They're obsessed with their husband to be. They're waiting to have children. I don't want children. I don't want a husband. I don't want to wait. I don't care. Well, I do care about weight loss, but not because it's going to land me a man who will give me babies. I care about my health, and there's reasons, which we're not going to talk about tonight, because I'm going to eat bacon wrapped dates. I have found repeatedly that mainstream romance novels have been loaded with this. These are the tropes of romance that I've experienced, especially when it's romance that falls into chick lit. And I don't identify with these women. I am plus size. I have been plus size since I was 13 years old. This is, in fact, the best shape I've been in since I was 14. You can't tell me reading women who are constantly obsessing about their weight, Bridget Jones, countless others, doesn't impact body dysmorphia. We see it over and over. This is our media. This is what's telling women how they're supposed to be. I'm more obsessed with my weight after I go through a patch of romance novels than I ever am with fantasy. I have made deliberate choices to not marry and not have kids. I don't want to read about constant repeating characters who are waiting for a man and to have babies and their life start. So I wanted to write something different, because I know there's different for us out there. There are women in this room who have decided not to marry and not to have children, not just Sarah. There are women who have decided to marry and not have children. There are women who have decided to have marriage, have children, then get rid of the idiot and keep the kids. And there are women who have decided to get married, get children, let him keep the kids. It just depends on you, and you should read diversity and representation in literature. Yes, race and culture and religion are more important with diversity. You should read you in the novels you read. But for the white women of the romance world, we should have diversity in our figures and our goals with life. And so I picked Jane Austen. Jane Austen, who in the Regency era was riddled with women who were valued for their ability to pick a husband and have children. Yeah, no, I know this. And we could have a whole conversation. I could spend hours talking about the fact that Jane Austen is satire, not romance. And I don't know if I'm going to read Mr. Darcy, but I want to hold Mr. Darcy. There's a reason I love Mr. Darcy. Jane Austen, for those who aren't familiar with her, is not merely a woman who had to live under the rule of an insane monarch and British monarch. So they just kind of go hand in hand, insanity and British. She was a woman outside of her time. She did not marry. She did not have children. And for what I know of her, based on one woman's interpretation, Anne Hathaway is a goddess. James McAvoy is coming in another book. Yeah, he's coming. He's one of my favorites. He inspired. She felt love. She got love. She just didn't get to keep love. And so she made the decision. Nobody else. No children. My books are my life. She writes heroines who are creatures of their time, but not typical women. And her heroes are not typical men. Modern Persuasion was based on her book Persuasion, which is about a pair of lovers who get a second chance at love. Anne Elliot, who inspired my Emma Shaw, was the middle child who had given up a love, the love of her life, because she was convinced he was by someone else, but that he wasn't right for her. But she had a second offer of marriage. Her younger sister ended up marrying him. No one forced her to accept that proposal. Her father did not pressure her, according to the narrative, to accept that proposal. Emma Woodhouse, clueless for those who are only looking at modernizations, took care and ran her house for her father because her mother was gone and her sister was married. These are not your typical women of their age. But Pride and Prejudice, and this is my high school copy of Pride and Prejudice. Captain Wentworth in Persuasion is my favorite hero. But Mr. Darcy is something special. He's an idiot. First and foremost, I will admit, the man is an idiot. But I bond with him because when you follow in the Myers-Briggs personality profile, you kind of connect, especially when you're a rare INTJ, which means I'm judging all of you, and I still love you. Mr. Darcy is an INTJ, which means you're introverted, you're judging. Everything wrong with Mr. Darcy is loaded into this INTJ. We're not emotional, except I cry at everything. But he's a socially anxious introvert, which is like the worst case scenario. He can't interact with people because he's social. And I think more of us understand social anxiety than Austen ever did, but she hit the nail on the head. The Bennet sisters, Elizabeth specifically, are living with a woman obsessed with their marriageability. This is where people mistake the story for a romance story. Mrs. Bennet wants her 5 daughters to get married because if they don't get married, they are destitute. They have nothing if their father dies. This happens in Sense and Sensibility. This actually happens. But in Pride and Prejudice, it doesn't happen because those girls get lucky. Mr. Bingley comes to town, and he brings his very, very, very wealthy friend, Mr. Darcy. Bingley's easy. Bingley wants a pretty face, easy personality, and if you're only paying attention to Mrs. Bennet, you get that. She is obsessed with her eldest daughter, Jane, who is pretty and easy on a smile and good-natured and shy as hell. And then she has her second daughter, Elizabeth, who is not as pretty, this is her, not as pretty as Jane. Elizabeth doesn't care. Nobody talks about her weight. Elizabeth never talks about getting married, except in Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, where she pretty much says, if any man asks me to give up the life of fighting zombies, he can suck it. And that's an approximation of the quote. I think the suck is my part. Mr. Darcy has rigorous criteria for a woman. He is where our heroes stand out. Your list to the common extent of accomplishments, says Darcy, has too much truth. He has a list. A woman must have thorough knowledge of music, singing, drawing, dancing, and all the modern languages. How many of us can say we've done that? I have 2 master's degrees. I can't do any of that. But I can write 2 books and no more short stories and maybe more books. None of his are, when he talks about who they look like, he's talking about their physicality, their presence, more than their beauty. Mr. Darcy doesn't want a beauty. Mr. Darcy wants a partner. He wants someone who's going to be his equal in his home. Maybe not running the money side of things, running the home, but running the home. This is the woman who is going to make sure he never notices when problems happen. This is the woman who's going to make sure his children are accomplished. She is still defined by her error, but Elizabeth Bennet cares more about the books she reads than she does how pretty she is. In fact, the sisters never really talk about who's the prettiest. They don't care. Nobody in any Austen book really cares about who's pretty. Their heroes aren't looking for a pretty woman, they're looking for their equals. Now, Mr. Darcy's accomplished woman does not exist. He admits to only knowing 6 women who could ever fit these qualities. And Elizabeth calls him out on it, which I think is the moment he decides he's going to marry her. This is just my opinion. This is not accepted reality. She always calls him out on his bullshit. Routinely. Like, that's her role in their relationship, is to call out his bullshit. So when I went to write, this is why I ended up at Modernizations of Austen, because she's outside of her time. She writes women in topics that haven't gone away. We're still persuaded by our friends and family to make decisions. We still let our pride and our prejudices influence our decision making. This is not Regency or thematics. This is life. This is what we do, how we do it, why we do it. It's just a modern twist on it. So yes, you're gonna meet Lisbeth Dreyfus, because this is not about the family, this is about a sorority of sisters by desire, not sisters by blood. So Jane is still sweet. She's not looking for marriage, but she's open to the love that can come to her from Charlie. And Lisbeth, instead of Elizabeth, is thinking more about graduate school and her career. She's shut down to relationships in a way. And Will Darcy rubs her the wrong way. Charlotte Lucas, who marries the worst possible pick out of all of them. And my preferred Mr. Collins, just so you know, is Matt Smith in Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. He is perfection as Mr. Collins. Just watch the movie for him. Like, if you've seen him in Doctor Who, you know what you're getting. Just switches that to Mr. Collins, the most annoying character ever written. In this book, Mrs. Bennet has been changed to Mrs. Collins. Colin Collins is her son. He is incredibly annoying. He mansplains in the middle of a presentation about mansplaining. To be fair, Will does not, he takes the bait and he continues to, and it's Lisbeth's presentation about mansplaining basically. And the two of them back and forth actually each other, Colin and Will, until Elizabeth says, actually, and if you've ever been in an academic classroom with men, actually becomes sort of the, but I'm going to mansplain something to you moment. And if you haven't experienced mansplaining, might I consider suggesting that maybe you are the mansplainer or the womansplainer? Because let me tell you, we all splain it someday. Nobody's thinking about marriage. This ends in marriage. They are in their 30s. They have gotten a second chance. They know where they are and what they want. And if you're on my mailing list, you might have read A Year of the Rooster. I know someone in the back has. Woo!